Security! Get these kids out of here now.
Victoria screamed.
Marcus looked at her and said, "We have the money. I'm trying to show you the bank statements." "Oh, please. What are you going to do? Pay with your allowance? This McLaren costs more than your parents' house," she said, loudly gesturing to the security to escort them out. What she don't know is that she just make the biggest mistake of her life. Welcome to Stories with Mr. Gray. If you love uncovering the truth and standing up for justice, hit subscribe, like and drop the flag of your country in the comments below. The afternoon sun blazed mercilessly over Prestige Motors, the city's most exclusive luxury car dealership. Inside the gleaming showroom, Marcus Chan and Tyler Rodriguez wandered between million-dollar supercars, their worn sneakers squeaking against the polished marble floors. At 17, both boys possessed that restless energy of youth, but their casual attire, faded jeans, basic t-shirts, and backpacks slung over their shoulders, made them stand out like sore thumbs among the pristine vehicles. Marcus ran his fingers along the sleek hood of a McLaren 720S, his eyes wide with admiration. "Dude, can you imagine driving something like this to school?" Tyler laughed, pulling out his phone to snap a photo next to a gleaming Lamborghini Aventador. "My mom would have a heart attack if she saw the insurance costs alone." Their innocent exploration was interrupted by the sharp click of expensive heels against marble. Victoria Sterling, the dealership's floor manager, approached with the precision of a predator stalking prey. Her perfectly coiffed blonde hair didn't move despite her brisk pace, and her tailored suit screamed authority and disdain. "Excuse me," she said, her voice dripping with condescension. "This isn't a museum. These vehicles are for serious buyers only." Marcus looked up, confusion flickering across his face. "We're just looking around. Is that not allowed?" Victoria's laugh was sharp and humorless. "Looking around? Do you see the price tags on these cars? The cheapest vehicle in here costs more than most people make in 5 years. I seriously doubt either of you could afford the monthly payment on a Toyota Corolla, let alone anything in this showroom." Tyler's cheeks flushed red. "We're not causing any trouble. We're just interested in cars." "Interested?"
Victoria scoffed.
"Let me paint you a picture of reality, boys. This is Prestige Motors, not some used car lot where you can kick tires and waste people's time. Our clientele consists of celebrities, business moguls, and people who don't think twice about spending $1 million on transportation. You two look like you should be asking, would you like fries with that? Instead of pretending you belong in a place like this." The venom in her words attracted the attention of other staff members and a few actual customers, who began to stare at the unfolding scene. Marcus felt his stomach twist with embarrassment, while Tyler's hands clenched into fists at his sides. "Look, we're not bothering anyone," Marcus said quietly, his voice barely containing his humiliation. "We can leave if you want." "Oh, you're absolutely leaving," Victoria declared, her voice rising loud enough to ensure everyone in the showroom could hear. "But first, let me make something crystal clear. This establishment caters to individuals with refined taste and substantial financial backing. We don't allow random teenagers to come in here treating our inventory like their personal playground. The security cameras have been recording your every move, and I won't hesitate to call the police if you so much as breathe on another vehicle." She gestured dramatically toward the exit. "Security will escort you out. And don't even think about coming back unless you've somehow managed to acquire several $1 million and learned how to dress appropriately for an establishment of this caliber." 2 large security guards materialized as if summoned by Victoria's theatrical performance. The entire showroom fell silent except for the whispered conversations of customers who seemed to be enjoying the spectacle. Marcus and Tyler, their faces burning with shame and anger, walked toward the exit under the watchful eyes of everyone present. "Enjoy your bus ride home, boys," Victoria called out as they reached the door, earning snickers from some of the onlookers. Outside in the parking lot, Tyler kicked at a loose piece of gravel, his frustration boiling over. Who does she think she is? We weren't doing anything wrong. Marcus remained quiet for a moment, staring back at the dealership's imposing glass facade. When he finally spoke, his voice was calm but carried an undercurrent of something dangerous. She has no idea who she just messed with. Tyler looked at his friend curiously. What do you mean? Marcus pulled out his phone, scrolling through his contacts until he found what he was looking for. My dad's going to find this very interesting. Your dad? Marcus, no offense, but my parents would probably side with that woman. Adults always stick together when it comes to stuff like this. A small smile played at the corners of Marcus's mouth. Tyler, there are some things about my family that I don't usually talk about. Let's just say my father has very strong opinions about people who judge others based on appearances. The next morning dawned crisp and clear, with the kind of perfect weather that made everything seem more vibrant and alive. Victoria Sterling arrived at Prestige Motors at her usual time, 8:30 a.m. sharp, carrying her designer coffee and wearing another impeccably tailored suit. She prided herself on maintaining the highest standards, both in her appearance and in the caliber of customers she allowed into the showroom. As she approached the dealership's entrance, she noticed a small crowd gathered on the sidewalk across the street. People were pointing and taking pictures of something, their excited chatter carrying across the morning air. Victoria paid little attention, probably some minor traffic incident or construction work that had caught the public's fascination. She unlocked the dealership's front door and stepped inside, immediately noticing that several of her staff members were pressed against the floor-to-ceiling windows, staring out at the street with expressions of disbelief. What's everyone gawking at? Victoria demanded, setting down her coffee with more force than necessary. We open in 30 minutes, and I expect this showroom to be pristine. Jennifer, one of the younger sales associates, turned around with wide eyes. Ms. Sterling, you need to see this. There are 2 Rolls-Royce vehicles parked outside, and they're unlike anything I've ever seen. Victoria rolled her eyes. It's a luxury car dealership, Jennifer. Rolls-Royce vehicles aren't exactly rare in this neighborhood. Get back to work. But as she spoke, she noticed that the crowd outside had grown larger, and even some of their regular customers who had arrived early were standing on the sidewalk, phones out, recording whatever had captured everyone's attention. Curiosity finally got the better of her, and Victoria strode to the window to see what could possibly be causing such a commotion. What she saw made her coffee cup slip from her nerveless fingers, the expensive beverage splashing across the marble floor. Parked directly in front of Prestige Motors were 2 vehicles that redefined the concept of automotive luxury. The first was a Rolls-Royce Phantom Series 8, but not just any Phantom. This was a bespoke creation that probably cost more than most people's houses. The exterior was finished in a deep midnight blue that seemed to absorb and reflect light simultaneously, with custom gold pinstriping that caught the morning sun like liquid metal. The Spirit of Ecstasy hood ornament appeared to be crafted from actual platinum, and the wheels were clearly custom-forged works of art. But it was the second vehicle that truly took Victoria's breath away. A Rolls-Royce Cullinan Black Badge, the pinnacle of luxury SUVs, sat beside the Phantom like a dark monument to automotive perfection. This wasn't just expensive. This was the kind of vehicle that required a personal relationship with the factory in Goodwood, England. The kind of car that had a waiting list measured in years, not months. Ms. Sterling. Jennifer's voice seemed to come from very far away. Should I open the doors early? I think those might be customers. Victoria's mind raced. In her 15 years at Prestige Motors, she had never seen vehicles of this caliber parked outside their dealership. Their inventory was impressive, certainly, but these Rolls-Royce models represented a level of customization and luxury that went beyond anything they typically had on the floor. The crowd outside continued to grow, with people taking selfies in front of the magnificent vehicles. Victoria could see that the attention was already drawing potential customers into their parking lot, curious to see what kind of dealership attracted such extraordinary automobiles. Yes, she said finally, her voice slightly hoarse. Open the doors. And make sure the showroom is absolutely perfect. If these are potential customers, they represent the kind of sale that could make our entire quarter. As Jennifer hurried to unlock the front entrance, Victoria remained transfixed by the sight of the two Rolls-Royce vehicles. The morning sun played across their flawless surfaces, and she could see her own reflection in the chrome work from 50 feet away. These weren't just cars, they were rolling statements of power, wealth, and influence. She watched as the driver's door of the Phantom opened with the whisper-quiet precision that only Rolls-Royce could achieve. A man emerged, and even from her vantage point inside the dealership, Victoria could see that everything about him radiated authority and success. He was impeccably dressed in what was clearly a bespoke suit, and his movements carried the confidence of someone accustomed to having the world arrange itself around his preferences. But what happened next made Victoria's heart nearly stop. Two familiar figures emerged from the passenger side of the Phantom. Marcus Chen and Tyler Rodriguez, the same two teenagers she had humiliated and thrown out of the dealership less than 24 hours earlier, stepped onto the sidewalk. But something was different about them now. Gone were the cheap clothes and uncertain demeanor. Marcus wore a perfectly fitted blazer over dark jeans, while Tyler sported a crisp button-down shirt that probably cost more than Victoria's monthly car payment. The man who had been driving, who Victoria now realized must be Marcus's father, placed a protective hand on his son's shoulder as they approached the dealership entrance. Even from inside, Victoria could see the family resemblance. The same intelligent eyes, the same quiet confidence that she had completely misread the day before. "Oh no," she whispered, the full implications of the situation crashing over her like a tidal wave. "Oh no, no, no." The automatic doors slid open with a soft chime, and Marcus Chun stepped into the showroom, followed by Tyler and the man Victoria now understood was one of the wealthiest individuals ever to set foot in Prestige Motors. The entire sales floor fell silent, with every staff member and customer turning to stare at the new arrivals. Marcus looked exactly the same as he had the day before. Same face, same build, same polite demeanor. But everything else about the situation had changed completely. Behind him stood a man whose presence seemed to fill the entire showroom, and outside, two Rolls-Royce vehicles worth more than the dealership's entire monthly inventory sat gleaming in the morning sun. Victoria felt her carefully constructed world begin to crumble around her. Marcus's father stepped forward, his eyes scanning the showroom with the practiced gaze of someone accustomed to evaluating businesses and their operations. When his gaze finally settled on Victoria, she felt as though she were being examined under a microscope. "Good morning," he said, his voice carrying the kind of quiet authority that made everyone in the vicinity pay attention. "I'm David Chun, and these are my son Marcus and his friend Tyler. I believe you had the pleasure of meeting them yesterday." The way he emphasized the word pleasure made it clear that he knew exactly what had transpired, and that he was not pleased about it. Victoria's mouth went dry, and she found herself struggling to form words. "Mr. Chun," she managed finally. We. Welcome to Prestige Motors." David Chen's smile was polite but contained no warmth whatsoever. "Yes, my son told me quite an interesting story about his visit here yesterday. Something about being judged unworthy of even looking at your inventory, about being treated like criminals for having the audacity to appreciate fine automobiles." The showroom remained deadly quiet. Victoria could feel the eyes of every staff member and customer burning into her, and she realized that several people were discreetly recording the interaction on their phones. "There must have been some misunderstanding," Victoria said weakly, but even as the words left her mouth, she knew how pathetic they sounded. "Oh, I don't think there was any misunderstanding at all," David Chun replied smoothly. "My son's account was quite detailed. Apparently, you informed him that he looked like he should be asking, 'Would you like fries with that?' instead of being in a place like this. You also suggested that the cheapest vehicle here cost more than most people make in 5 years, and that neither he nor his friend could afford a Toyota Corolla payment. With each word, Victoria felt smaller and smaller. The exact phrases she had used the day before were being repeated back to her in front of everyone, and there was no denying or softening what she had done. Marcus spoke for the first time since entering the dealership, his voice calm and measured. She also said we didn't have refined taste or substantial financial backing, and that we needed to learn how to dress appropriately for an establishment of this caliber. Tyler nodded, adding, "She called security to escort us out and told us not to come back unless we acquired several $1,000,000. David Chen's expression didn't change, but somehow his presence seemed to grow even more imposing. Several $1,000,000. How interesting. Tell me, MS? Sterling, Victoria croaked. Victoria Sterling. Miss Sterling, are you familiar with my business ventures? Victoria shook her head, not trusting her voice. I own Chen Industries, among other interests. Perhaps you've heard of it. The blood drained from Victoria's face. Chen Industries was one of the largest tech conglomerates in the world, with subsidiaries in everything from renewable energy to artificial intelligence. David Chen wasn't just wealthy. He was one of those individuals whose net worth was measured in billions, not millions. I see you're beginning to understand, David Chen continued. Now, my son mentioned that you require several $1,000,000 before you'll treat customers with basic human dignity. I happen to have somewhat more than several $1,000,000, so I thought we might discuss purchasing a few vehicles. He gestured toward the window where the two Rolls-Royce vehicles sat like monuments to his wealth. Of course, I brought my own transportation, since my son was told he didn't belong here. But I thought it might be educational to see what kind of inventory you have that could possibly justify such extraordinary arrogance. Victoria felt like she was drowning. Every word out of David Chen's mouth was perfectly polite, perfectly reasonable, and absolutely devastating. She could see her career, her reputation, and quite possibly her entire future crumbling in real time. Mr. Chen, she began desperately, I sincerely apologize for any what? He interrupted, his voice still calm but with an edge that cut through her words like a blade. Any misunderstanding? Any confusion? Miss Sterling, there was no misunderstanding yesterday. You made a conscious decision to judge two young men based entirely on their appearance and age. You chose to humiliate them in front of your customers and staff. You decided that they were unworthy of basic courtesy simply because they didn't look wealthy enough to meet your standards. The silence in the showroom was deafening. Victoria could hear her own heartbeat pounding in her ears, and she was dimly aware that several customers had pulled out their phones and were recording the interaction. David Chen walked slowly toward the center of the showroom, his hands clasped behind his back as he examined the vehicles on display. Let's talk about business, shall we? I'm in the market for several new vehicles. My company's executive fleet could use some upgrades, and I have various family members who might appreciate fine automobiles. He paused beside a Ferrari 812 Superfast, running his finger along its pristine paint job. This is lovely. What's the asking price? Jennifer, who had been standing frozen near the entrance, suddenly sprang into action. That's $450,000, sir. It's a 2023 model with all the available options. Interesting, David Chen mused. And this Lamborghini? $620,000, sir. It's a limited edition Aventador SVJ. David nodded thoughtfully, continuing his circuit of the showroom.
McLaren.
$730,000, sir. Bentley Continental GT? $380,000, sir. David Chen completed his tour of the available inventory, his son and Tyler following behind him like an entourage. Finally, he returned to where Victoria stood, her face now completely drained of color. Impressive selection, he said conversationally. Roughly $10 million worth of inventory, if I'm calculating correctly. Tell me, Miss Sterling, what's your commission structure here? Victoria's voice was barely a whisper. 2% of sale price for vehicles over 200,000. 4% for anything above 500,000. So if someone were to purchase, say, $5 million worth of vehicles, you would make approximately $200,000 in commission?
Victoria nodded mutely.
And how many sales of that magnitude do you typically see in a year? Maybe 2 or 3. David Chin smiled, and it was the most terrifying expression Victoria had ever seen. So this would represent a very significant sale for you personally. The kind of sale that could change your life. Yes, sir. The kind of sale that makes or breaks careers. Yes, sir. David Chen turned to his son. Marcus, what do you think? Should we give Ms. Sterling the opportunity to earn that commission? Marcus pretended to consider the question seriously. Well, Dad, yesterday she made it very clear that we don't belong in a place like this. She said we don't have refined taste or substantial financial backing. Maybe we should respect her professional judgment and shop somewhere more appropriate for people like us. Tyler chimed in. She also said we needed to learn how to dress appropriately. Maybe we should come back when we look more like serious buyers. David Chin nodded sagely. You make excellent points, boys. Miss Sterling is clearly an expert at identifying qualified customers. If she determined that you don't belong here, then perhaps we should trust her expertise. He turned back to Victoria, who looked like she might faint at any moment. Ms. Sterling, my son and his friend have convinced me that since you've determined that they, and by extension, I don't meet your standards for clientele, we'll take our business elsewhere.
No.
The word burst from Victoria's lips before she could stop it. Mr. Chun, please. I made a terrible mistake. I was completely wrong. I would be honored to help you find the perfect vehicles. David Chun raised an eyebrow. But yesterday you were quite certain that my son and his friend were not the kind of customers this establishment serves. Surely your professional standards haven't changed overnight. Victoria was openly begging now, her carefully maintained composure completely shattered. I was wrong. I was completely, utterly wrong. I judged them unfairly, and I'm so sorry. Please, give me a chance to make this right. Interesting, David Chin mused. So you're saying that your behavior yesterday was unprofessional? That you treated potential customers poorly based on superficial judgments? Yes, sir. Absolutely yes, sir. And you're admitting this in front of your colleagues and customers? Victoria looked around the showroom, seeing the faces of her coworkers and the customers who were witnessing her complete humiliation. But the potential commission from this sale was too enormous to pass up. Yes, sir. I was completely in the wrong. David Chun considered this for a long moment, then pulled out his phone. One moment, please. He dialed a number and waited for someone to answer. Hello, Richard? It's David Chin. I'm standing in Prestige Motors right now, and I've just had the most educational experience. Yes, that's right, the same dealership. No. I think you'll find this quite interesting. Victoria watched in growing horror as David Chun recounted the previous day's events to whoever was on the other end of the line. She caught fragments of the conversation. Humiliated my son. Judged based on appearance. Called security. Told them they didn't belong. Finally, David Chin ended the call and turned back to Victoria. That was Richard Blackwood, the owner of this dealership. Interesting conversation. He's actually a friend of mine. We've done business together for years. He's quite upset to learn how his customers have been treated. Victoria felt like the floor was going to open up and swallow her whole. Richard Blackwood wasn't just the owner of Prestige Motors. He owned a chain of luxury dealerships across 3 states, and his reputation in the industry was legendary. He'll be here in 20 minutes, David Chun continued. He wants to personally apologize for your behavior and discuss how to prevent this kind of situation in the future. Marcus stepped forward, speaking directly to Victoria for the first time since they'd entered. You know what the really sad part is? Tyler and I actually love cars. We spend hours reading about them, watching videos, learning about different models and their capabilities. We weren't here to waste anyone's time. We were here because we genuinely appreciate automotive excellence. Tyler nodded. And we would have told anyone who asked that my dad owns 3 dealerships in the next state over and Marcus's family. Well, obviously Marcus's family has the resources to buy anything they want. But you never asked. You just assumed. David Chen's voice was quiet but carried clearly throughout the silent showroom. This experience has taught my son and his friend a valuable lesson about how the world works. They've learned that some people will judge them based on superficial factors rather than their character or potential. They've learned that respect isn't automatic. It has to be earned and given freely. He paused, looking directly at Victoria. But they've also learned that actions have consequences. That treating people poorly because you think they can't fight back is not just wrong. It's also incredibly stupid. The sound of expensive heels clicking rapidly against marble announced the arrival of Richard Blackwood. The dealership owner burst through the front entrance. His face flushed and his usually perfect appearance slightly disheveled. Behind him trailed 2 men in expensive suits who were clearly his assistants or legal counsel. "David," Richard called out as he spotted his friend. "I came as soon as I could. I am so incredibly sorry about what happened. This is absolutely unacceptable." David Chun shook his friend's hand warmly. "Richard, good to see you. I'd like you to meet my son Marcus and his friend Tyler." Richard Blackwood immediately extended his hand to both teenagers, his manner respectful and apologetic. "Boys, I cannot begin to express how sorry I am about your experience here yesterday. This kind of treatment is completely contrary to everything we stand for." He turned to face Victoria, and the temperature in the room seemed to drop several degrees. "Ms. Sterling, my office. Now." Victoria's career at Prestige Motors ended exactly 14 minutes later. She emerged from Richard Blackwood's office carrying a cardboard box containing her personal items, her face streaked with tears and her professional reputation in ruins. The security guards who had escorted Marcus and Tyler out the day before now performed the same service for her, though with considerably less ceremony. As she walked past the group near the front of the showroom, David Chun spoke one final time. "Ms. Sterling, I hope you'll remember this lesson going forward. You never know who you're talking to, and more importantly, every person deserves to be treated with basic dignity and respect, regardless of how much money you think they have." Victoria nodded mutely and continued toward the exit, her heels clicking against the marble floor for the last time. With Victoria gone, the atmosphere in the showroom immediately lightened. Richard Blackwood personally gave Marcus and Tyler a comprehensive tour of the inventory, explaining the features and capabilities of each vehicle with genuine enthusiasm. David Chin followed along, asking technical questions and showing a level of automotive knowledge that impressed even the most experienced sales staff. "Now then," Richard said finally, "what can we do to make yesterday's experience right?" David Chin smiled, and this time the expression was warm and genuine. "Actually, Richard, I think we're going to need to discuss fleet purchases for Chun Industries. We're expanding our executive transportation program, and I believe Marcus mentioned something about wanting to learn to drive on something with a bit more character than a standard sedan." Marcus's eyes lit up. "Dad, are you serious? Well, you're 17. It's time you learned to handle a proper automobile. What do you think about that Aston Martin over there?" Tyler laughed. "Dude, your first car is going to be an Aston Martin. That's so not fair." "Who said anything about first car?" David Chun replied with a grin. "Marcus needs something practical for daily driving, something sporty for weekends, and something sophisticated for formal occasions. And Tyler, your father and I have been discussing your mechanical aptitude. I believe there might be a summer internship opportunity at one of our automotive research facilities, if you're interested." The rest of the afternoon passed in a blur of test drives, paperwork, and excited conversations about performance specifications and customization options. By the time they left Prestige Motors, David Chun had purchased 4 vehicles totaling just over $3 million and had placed orders for 6 more cars for various Chun Industries executives. But more importantly, Marcus and Tyler had learned something invaluable about standing up for themselves and the power of letting people reveal their true character. They had discovered that the best revenge isn't getting angry. It's proving exactly how wrong someone was about you. As they drove away in the Rolls-Royce Phantom, with the new Aston Martin being delivered the following week, Marcus reflected on the experience. Dad, do you think Victoria learned anything from today? David Chun considered the question as they glided silently through traffic. I hope so, son. But more importantly, what did you learn? Marcus thought for a moment. That how people treat you when they think you can't do anything about it tells you everything you need to know about their character. And that you should never judge someone based on appearances, because you never know who they really are or what they're capable of. David Chun smiled proudly. Those are lessons that will serve you well in life, Marcus. Remember them. If you were Marcus, what would you have done after getting kicked out? Drop your answer in the comments. Let's see who's choosing revenge and who's choosing to walk away. Thanks for watching and see you in the next one.